Imagine this for a moment. The year is 2023, the battlefield is Kyiv, and the stakes are higher than ever. President Biden turns to President Zelensky. What will you do if Russia attacks Ukraine with everything they've got? Zelensky, unwavering, responds, "We will fight back with aircraft and missiles." Biden, pressing further, "What if you don't have those weapons?" Zelensky's answer is as clear as it is bold, "Then we will fight with tanks." Biden, still skeptical, asks, "And what if there are no tanks either? What will you do then?" Zelensky, staring him down, replies with one simple, chilling question: "Are you my friend or a friend of Russia?" This conversation is not just about war strategy, it's a window into the very real crisis that Ukraine faces, and the role of foreign military aid in that struggle. But the question remains, how effective is that aid? And is it enough to turn the tide? The question of foreign military aid to Ukraine is not just about sending weapons across the border. It's a complex geopolitical gamble. As Russia continues its aggression, Ukraine's dependence on Western military support has reached unprecedented levels. From weapons to intelligence and financial aid, these resources are vital for Ukraine's defense. But there's one major catch: much of the aid Ukraine receives is obsolete, outdated, and barely functional. Let's start with the most glaring issue: the quality of the equipment. The US and European countries have supplied Ukraine with vast amounts of military hardware, tanks, jets, and armored vehicles. But the truth is, much of this equipment is old in a way that means it should have been decommissioned years ago. These aren't just any old tanks and jets. They're relics from the Cold War era, systems that were supposed to be scrapped, not sent into a live combat zone. We're talking about vehicles, artillery, and aircraft that were never meant to face the kind of modern warfare Russia is throwing at Ukraine. But here's where it gets interesting. Ukraine's engineers and military experts have become some of the most innovative and resourceful in the world. They've managed to repair and repurpose these outdated machines, turning them into weapons of war. Ukrainian ingenuity is saving the day, at least for now. But there's a catch: repairing outdated systems comes with limitations. Eventually, these machines will reach their breaking point, and without proper upgrades or new tech, Ukraine could face significant losses. Now, let's look at why Western nations are sending these outdated systems in the first place. It's not because they're trying to undermine Ukraine's defense. The simple truth is, it's cheaper. It's far more cost-effective for the US and European countries to send old tanks and jets than it is to deliver state-of-the-art systems like F-16s or the Patriot missile defense system. Politically speaking, it's also less risky. By providing older equipment, NATO countries avoid the perception that they're escalating the conflict. Sending new, high-tech weaponry could be viewed as a direct provocation to Russia, a spark that could ignite a much wider war. And let's be honest, many Western governments are trying to avoid that scenario at all costs. But there's a much bigger question that needs to be addressed. Is this strategic calculus short-sighted? Is sending outdated equipment just a way to appear helpful while actually offering little to win the war? Let's zoom out for a moment. Ukraine may be fighting for its survival, but the rest of Europe is also at risk. Russia has already made its intentions clear: it isn't stopping with Ukraine. Plans have been uncovered. Russia is preparing to strike the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Thousands of Russian troops are already on standby. Finland's strategic importance is well known to Moscow, and in the event that Russia successfully overwhelms Ukraine, these countries could very well be next in line. Here's where the stakes skyrocket. The United States and the European Union have already poured billions into supporting Ukraine, but if Russia moves into Finland and the Baltics, those same billions will seem like a drop in the ocean. NATO, which is already overstretched, will be forced to confront Russia on multiple fronts. The cost of defending Europe could be much higher for the US and NATO than the cost of supporting Ukraine, yet many Americans argue about the burden of paying taxes to help a country at war. So, let's pause and think about this. What do you think? Is the West doing enough to deter Russia, or is the failure to supply Ukraine with cutting-edge technology just postponing the inevitable? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for more videos where we dive into the geopolitics that shape our world today. Now, let's talk about the big-ticket items: the F-16 fighter jets, the Patriot missile defense systems, and drones. These are the weapons that Ukraine is desperately asking for. And for good reason. Ukraine's air defense capabilities are among the weakest in Europe, and Russia's air superiority has been one of the main advantages they've had throughout this war. The US and NATO have been hesitant to deliver these advanced systems. Why? Some say it's because of the risk of provoking Russia, while others argue it's about keeping NATO's actions restrained, keeping the war limited to Ukraine alone. But if Ukraine had these systems in place, the course of the war could be radically different. With F-16s, Ukraine could target Russian positions more effectively from the sky. With Patriot missiles, they could defend against incoming Russian strikes. And drones could help with surveillance and pinpoint strikes on Russian infrastructure, giving Ukraine a real chance to take the initiative. But time is running out. Can the West afford to keep dragging its feet? So where do we go from here? NATO, the US, and the EU will face an even harder decision if Russia begins its next phase of aggression. In many ways, Ukraine is a testing ground, a test of how committed the West is to its own security and values. If Ukraine falls, NATO will have to deal with a much larger problem. An emboldened Russia could rewrite the rules of European security, and the costs of defending Europe could be astronomical, far more than any foreign military aid sent to Ukraine. Here's the final question for you: is foreign military aid to Ukraine just a temporary solution, or will the West need to make a much larger commitment to secure its future? Leave your thoughts below, and make sure to share this video with anyone who needs to understand what's really at stake in Ukraine. The choices made today will define the future of Europe and the world. Stay tuned, and stay informed.